can't pay her employees. She will be talking with Mr. Newhouse's representatives here today. Kat Gehring of Room 1, a social services organization, a wonderful organization here in the Valley. She'll be speaking with them. There will be a representative of the LGBTQ community. I don't know who that will be, but there will be. Melinda Pruitt-Jones of Jamie's Place, discussing long-term care issues with Newhouse's representatives. And Ashley herself told me that if there's enough time, other people will be able to go in the basement and speak in groups of 1, 2, or 3 with them, their preferred format. So I would encourage everybody to stick around, stay here the whole time to make an impression on these representatives here today, because they will be able to take that information back to Dan Newhouse and hopefully it will make an impression on him. Question by John.
Have the two representatives seen this crowd, or are they sequestered?
Oh yeah, they've seen the crowd.
Okay.
And I would encourage everybody to stay so that when they do come up after 2 hours, they still see us here. If this place is empty, it's not going to be the same, so stay. Are we going to be able to speak to one another? I would say, why not? So introduce yourselves and keep it really brief, because there's a lot of people here. Just summarize it if you can, and don't go on and on.
I would like to say to Mr. Newhouse, when you stood up to Trump before, we had your back. Please save our post offices and save our rural broadband. No Starlink, please.
So simply stated, this district is 1.7 million acres. The entire Mount Vegas control is 2 million. This is a huge district. This entire economy runs on recreation in the summer. Not entirely, but a huge part of our summer season is recreation. And yeah, just want to emphasize the importance of public lands. Every American loves public lands, and that's what makes this country unique. And the tradition of trail crews has been around for a century.
Betsy made a comment when she spoke up here about waking up in the middle of the night and like ruining the end of democracy. And I think probably with a show of hands, we could find the vast majority of people in this room feel the same way. People have lost sleep. Put your hands up. Have you woken up thinking that everything's going to shit? That's kind of what I imagine. And so I'm just going to, before I say anything else, I just want to say, man, it's so important to take care of yourself and take a break periodically and just kind of give it a rest, because this is the long haul. So currently, there is this this budget resolution that's been voted on, which is going to attempt to cut a lot of essential services for people who really, really, really need these services. There's also at play the extension of the Trump tax cut, which would basically save lower income people a tiny bit of money, and it would save higher income people quite a bit more money. The more real effect that it would have on lower income people is just this drastic draconian reduction in services that people who are just trying to get by are going to see. And so, as Jimmy mentioned and as Kat mentioned, Medicaid cuts are, I mean, that's huge.
Thanks all for coming, for being willing to take part of your day. We are the role models for our children, for our grandchildren, for our students. They see what we're doing or not doing. Sunday I got my 2 sons and their families together. They're elementary school age. It's not too soon to let them know we have a government that works because of the people. And if we can drill that home again and again, what can we do? That's one of the things that we can do, is include them as much as possible. And entertain questions, you know what I'm saying. be a part of the solution, not just part of the problem. Thank you.
I am a citizen here in Twisp. I'm also a business owner, an employer, and I represent thousands of patients that my company has served. That's why I'm here, to advocate for not cutting Medicaid, but also not Medicare, and really importantly for our county is also the VA. We have a tremendous veteran population that relies on veteran benefits here. It's like 9%. Most people don't realize that. So if you combine those three services, federally funded services, it's almost 50% of Okanagan population. That's a lot of us. So it's not just Medicaid, but it's VA, it's Medicare. And beyond that, we're also being affected, everybody who's not on those programs. We need to protect the Affordable Care Act so that we can all have medical benefits that serve the rest of us as well. And in addition to just the services that we receive for health care, social services, we also employ a tremendous amount of medical people in this county. It's one of the top employers in Okanagan County.
I just want to point out that we're here trying to communicate with an elected official who has so far refused to come here in person and meet with us. So my solution to that is let's elect somebody who will come here. And the only way to do that is if people run for office. I'm involved with a group, and we could not find people to run for our county commissioner race. So yes, Congress, that's a tough race. That's really hard, but there are 120 elected positions up this year in Okanagan County. We're talking city councils, hospital boards, mayors, all kinds of local government, and those people are going to be kind of one of the front lines. The county commissioners, I don't know if you know, but they appoint people to the library boards. Those library boards decide whether books get banned or not. We have school district races. So I would encourage anybody who is tired of what's going on to sign up, run for something. And don't wait until May. Filing week is in May. That's when you file to get your name on the ballot. But if you're going to run a serious campaign, you need to start now. You need to make your decision now. And if you're not going to run, at least volunteer to help somebody who does. Thank you.
I'm a former Forest Service employee. I got fired about a month ago from my position. But yeah, so I worked for the Forest Service for here in the Methow Valley for 8 years, mostly in fire on the crew and as a smoke jumper, and most recently in an environmental planning capacity on the district. My wife is also employed by federal land manager. She works for a federal land manager as well. So I guess we're pretty affected by DOGE. You know, the layoffs are one thing, but less obvious is the efforts to make it really hard to be a federal employee. You know, Elon Musk described it as like making it you know, miserable enough so that folks leave on their own accord. And for us personally, you know, with 2 young kids, even if I get reinstated, which is kind of unclear right now, we wouldn't be able to work 2 federal jobs with childcare and all that. So yeah, that's a major bummer because we both love working for the feds, and we think that federal lands are the lifeblood of this community.
I live here in Twisp, and I'm a mental health counselor, and I wanted to build off something that Andy McConkey said, just, you know, how long of a haul this is. And I want to make a case for, let me back up. I'm also feeling enraged, as so many of us are, about everything that's going on. And one thing that I want to make a case for is finding time to get underneath the rage and feel the grief about all the losses. I mean, there are so many losses, loss after loss, after injustice after injustice. I've been crying over here as everybody's been talking. I'm crying now. And I think that it's the only way forward is to make room for, yes, the anger. That's like what brings us all here and mobilizes us, but we're gonna burn out if we don't let ourselves kind of get underneath that and feel the rest of it. So, thank you.
I want to talk about the cuts to the federal government. My wife is a federal employee. Her employer tried to cut costs by cutting many things, but not by cutting jobs. They wanted to protect their staff. They thought a proposal to Dodge that would meet the cost-cutting requirements and not cut staff. Dodge said this is not enough. Essentially, Dodge does not care about cutting costs. This is about cruel and dehumanizing people who are trying to serve the public. It's about eliminating people hired by merit. I want everyone here to be aware of that. Thank you.
I want to talk about a couple things. One is the politicization of the military. My West Point classmate, Joe Berger, was the head JAG of the Army. That's the head lawyer for the Army. And he was unceremoniously fired without notice. And I just want to let you know, the purpose of the JAG is to provide guidance to commanders from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff all the way down to battalion commanders to make sure that they're making decisions that are within the law and the Constitution. So he was removed along with his peers, and then several layers below were also removed. Replacing him is a civilian whose career has been defending war criminals. Okay, this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. We have a constitutional crisis.
Yes, we do.
We're in the fourth phase of a 6-stage conversion to full authoritarianism. So a lot of the things we're talking about, things like candidates and things like voting, we have a very small window. Because if things progress, this has only been 6 weeks. And actually the first phase occurred in the first term. He completed the complete delegitimization of the federal government, of civil service, of the courts, of the media. That all happened already. He already did it. So the other thing I want to talk about is cuts to the threat of the USDA programs being cut. So we haven't gotten the full impact of what's going to happen there yet, but just recognize that a lot of the folks in the valley who farm are dependent upon loans that come out of USDA programs. They're dependent upon grants that come out of the EQIP and several other programs like that, and that allows them to keep producing. It allows them to stay in business. It allows them to make food and products available to not only people in the valley but beyond. There are hundreds of thousands of people who would be impacted if they go out of business. And so let me give you an example. At my farm, we had a contract with the federal government to get a greenhouse. So you produce a bunch of starts, you sign the contract, you have to spend money up front. Your starts are going at a certain rate of growth. They don't fulfill their end of the contract. It's a month late. What happens to your starts? You can't move them into bigger containers. You're a month behind now. And there continue to be projects for people throughout the valley for things like irrigation, things that improve efficiency of water use to protect our rivers. And I'm really concerned that that stuff is going to be line item just like every other agency. The other thing I'd say is, although Trump is playing tough guy, he's damaging critically our national security. And what I would say is, you need to know that every employee in the CIA got the fork in the road letter. So all these things about attacking Panama or taking over Canada or Greenland, for example. How would you even do that without security? Well, the reason he doesn't want them there is because he doesn't want anybody who has guns that he doesn't control. The other impact we're going to see is we're going to have lasting damage to our professional military officer corps. And what I mean by that is these people have been trained in the Constitution. They've been trained to follow civilian authority. If they get an illegal order, they do one of two things. They quit, or they protest and then stay on. If they stay on under this administration, they'll likely be court-martialed. I'm anticipating that if the order to use the federal military active duty troops against civilians happens, there will be cascades of people resigning, and that'll do generational damage to our ability to defend ourselves. And the last thing I want to say is, really, if we're going to survive this, we have to recognize that federal services, federal dollars, they're going away, right? We're probably not going to get them back in the next year or two. So, households that depend upon those dollars, state programs that fund from those dollars, municipal, county, they're going away. So we're going to have to pull together. So we're going to have to make up for that gap. We have to, because we're not going to have it. And the thing is we can't do it by just the people who are in this room. The people who voted for Trump, they're going to need our help, and we're going to need their help. And the reality is, those people were lied to. They've been manipulated for 2 decades. Billionaires like Peter Thiel have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in order to fool them. The most sophisticated, weaponized information, disinformation platforms that ever existed are pointed at them to ensure that they're misinformed and isolated. But we have things in common that we can reach out to them for. They're veterans, they're farmers, they're on Social Security, they need Medicare. If things happen with food, if prices go up due to tariffs, due to farmers going out of business, they're going to be affected too. So we can pull together, and I think if we're talking about these fundamental issues and we're going to have to do things as a community, I believe there's an opportunity for people to peel off from that. It won't seem as cool at that point. And maybe really what it comes down to is civil society. And what that means is joining, belonging, meeting, helping. And it doesn't matter what, if it's a book club or the Kiwanis or the Eagles or whatever, but just talking to people who maybe are in a different age group, have a different vocation, live in a different part of the valley, have a different political opinion, then you can influence each other. And so we all need, there's no one in the room who can't do that in some way. That's all I have to say.
Our school system, our school district, and what is going to happen to that if the Department of Education goes away and the federal funding goes away. I'm a 40-year educator, a retired educator. Half of that time, thank you. Half of that time I was a classroom teacher. Half of the time I was an administrator. And part of my administrative duties in some of those years was coordinating and facilitating federal funding, including for this school district for 10 years. So one of the things I want to share with you, well, first of all, look around you. You'll notice that there are a lot of people missing. It is because they are working. The people that I know that work in the school district said to me, please be our voice. We can't come. We are with children right now. And there are no young families here because young families can't come to meetings at 11 o'clock in the middle of the day either. So I hope I'm speaking for them. Federal funding. It may not be obvious what federal funding does in public schools, but in a district like this one, a high poverty district, over 40% of the students in this district qualify for free and reduced lunch. When you have that many students in poverty in your district, then the district gets federal funding and they get a lot of flexibility about how they spend that funding. It's not specific. They can use it however they feel is best. And our district here is brilliant at stretching that money to improve the education experience for every single student in our public schools. So I just, and I know this because I coordinated that funding for several years in the Methow Valley School District. I want to just share with you some of the things, and this is not anywhere near the exhaustive list of things that federal funding does in our district. It provides money for teacher salaries. So many of our teachers in the school have part of their salary paid for out of Title I funding, and that allows class sizes to be reasonable numbers instead of 30 or 35. Reading specialists, paraprofessionals, counseling services, teacher support on the playground when a lot of our kids, especially neurodivergent kids, really need that support. Teachers' aides for classroom support, free and reduced lunches. And in our school district right now, everyone gets breakfast and lunch free so that there is no stigma for the kids who are actually on free and reduced lunch. ELL support, and many, many, many other things. So I just hope that you will pay close attention to what's happened in the Department of Education. There are people that say the department can go away, the funding will still be there, but I can tell you that schools have to budget ahead of time. And if that funding is not predictable, and if it's not something that can be counted on, then school districts cannot budget for it, and that means cuts in all of the things that I've told you about. The school district is the heart of our community, and we cannot let this happen to it. Thank you.
I am also an early childhood educator. I'm also a global peace activist and a queer person. So, with all those hats in mind, I'm here today actually to talk about how we support our LGBTQ+ community members, especially young people at this time. I have been queer all my life, as all my queer community would agree with, and my partner, my spouse, is trans. This is a scary freaking time for us. Not a little bit scary, existentially scary. I did a very thorough report during my post-secondary education on the rounding up of queer people during the Nazi takeover following the Weimar Republic. We are frontline community members. What happens to us is a test, a temperature test on what the communities around us will tolerate on themselves. Right now, we are concerned about traveling by air. Right now, I cannot visit my family in Texas and Arkansas safely with my spouse in tow. Right now, young people are facing tremendous threats to their humanity, to their right to exist, and also to their shared history. I'm not 40 yet, but I'm considered a young elder in my queer community because the elders before us, many of them died during the AIDS epidemic. So, as a not yet 40-year-old, I receive calls all the time from young people and adults in this community about their very real fear. I'm concerned that my own family will not safely be able to cross the border to Canada or Mexico and return without being shaken down by federal and government employees. This is a really scary time, and it involves federal documentation. You know, my spouse cannot safely update their passport. That is terrifying. We have anti-queer rhetoric moving through young people in our education system because the adults around them use that language with abandon. We have elevated monstrous identities into substantial leadership. This is a scary time. So, from my perspective, we need to wrap around our young people. We need to model for them not just passive peace. We need to model for them personal, interpersonal, and community peace. I have a global climate action and peace movement called BioEarth. We work all over the world on these issues. Happy to talk about it somewhere offline. But what we know is that peace is not just the absence of violence. It involves well-being across the spectrum, economic well-being, cultural well-being, spiritual well-being, and on and on and on. So all these interconnected, interrelated issues matter. The other thing I wanted to offer is Met How Recycles is an organization that serves everyone in our community without regard for politics. We are an organization that for 25 years has done a great job building rural community behavior change. So for the entire week of Earth Week, instead of doing a festival, we're actually going to do a dispersed week of public land care and action. We'll give Aspen a shout out right there. Her husband is a smoke jumper, and she said, you know, with the morale down, with the impacts on our federal land, what if instead of pulling people into a party, we encourage everyone to go out into the community and take care of this beautiful landscape and support and amplify the needs of our federal workers. So that's one of the ways that we're taking purposeful action right now. I encourage anyone who is in relationship with a local nonprofit to check in with them. Many of us are making extremely hard decisions about grants we will and won't go for. Right now we're having to assess criminal liability risk exposure for applying for federal grants. So when people talk about the money going away, that forecasting is unnerving for an executive director right now. And so we really need your support as well as anyone else in the community. But if you're curious about how to support, I'm gonna go back to queer folks for a second. You're welcome to reach out to Met How Pride. You're also welcome to come find me and I can share some organizing actions that we're taking. But please track who in our communities are frontline, our immigrants, our queer folks, our elders, our youngest. They're going after the vulnerable first. I'm also a neurodivergent person. Those of us with disabilities and different needs are directly in target right now with federal funding cuts, but also with violence. So, wage peace, start in here, then go out here. If you are dysregulated, you're going to reverberate that into your community. So it isn't just the external, it's the internal, and we have to work together to arrive in that peaceful place. Thank you for showing up.
It's good to see you all here because if there's a silver lining associated with all of this trouble is the fact that we kind of let ourselves go for the past 2 decades. We need to participate in government, and that involves getting into the details. I want to bring to light 2 specific details that I think are overlooked that will help you kind of give at least my perspective on this. I've been lazy. I'm sorry for being lazy. I know a lot of you have been doing a lot of really good work. It's been great to see how many people have been organized for so long. Thank you. You're an inspiration to me and everyone else. First, I want to build on something that Dan was talking about in the Forest Service. The seasonal trail crews that repair our trails every single year were cut before the election started. They were all dismissed before the election. I assume that meant that they thought that the money might be able to get worked back, but that's an important thing to know because those trails are directly tied to outdoor recreation, which, according to the Met How Valley Citizens Council's website, gives us $150 million annually to the county in terms of recreational tourism money. That's important for all of our businesses, right? Because those are nights in hotel rooms, those are meals in restaurants, those are items sold in your stores, and for me as a business owner, that's coffee sold at the farmer's market. The other thing I want to bring to light, and this is the thing that I tried to focus, what can I bring to this discussion specific, what can I ask Dan Newhouse to do, is related to tariffs. Because we already know the economy is doing very poorly, especially here. But the continuing resolution, this is a detail, right, so that's my point. The continuing resolution that Newhouse voted for, that the House proposed, included a little amendment. If you're looking for the details, it's like HJ 25 Section 4. And the details aren't terribly important, except for it was modeled after the gag order used to prevent the House of Representatives from even discussing slavery back in the day. The exact same technocratic legal procedure was used to stop the House of Representatives from even discussing removing the emergency proclamation that the president invoked to start using all of these tariffs, to start imposing these tariffs. In other words, the House of Representatives voted to to prevent themselves from voting against removing the tariffs, because the House of Representatives voted as part of their continuing resolution budget, voted away their right, their job to control the president's ability to impose tariffs. The president can put tariffs on because of this emergency declaration. Congress can take them off. But, as part of the continuing resolution, a little addendum was tacked into one of the little pieces of paper tucked in this corner somewhere that says that they're not allowed to do that anymore for the remainder of the 119th Congress, so until 2026, the elections after that. So my proposal to Representative Newhouse was, you need to get in there, sponsor legislation to overturn that specific provision so that Congress can do its job. And that's just one thing. I have a laundry list just like you, but I thought I'd bring up two very technocratic, really important, narrow-minded points just to emphasize the fact that we all need to pay attention. You don't need to pay attention to everything, but if we all pay attention to one or two things, they'll overlap. And we can get through this. And we will. So thank you for being here.
Take yourself out to your favorite place around here somewhere. It's probably on the National Forest. Now imagine if it was a lot more expensive to get there, or the roads are washed out, trails are gone, you can't get there at all, or it's been sold off. The Forest Service and other public agencies have been getting underfunded for years, not just this last go-around. The staffing has been going down, not up. There used to be like 20 people working on the trails here. It's a lot less than that now. Well, now it's probably none. So it's kind of like by design they want it to fail so that we'll all just throw our hands up in the air and say government doesn't work. Let's try something different, which they're hoping is privatization. Costs a lot more to manage a contract and pay a contractor plus their profit than it does to directly pay a public employee, a public servant, a civil servant. But that's what's going on, or it's going to be IA. So anyway, this is just about thinking about your favorite place and how important that is to, that's a lot of why we're all here, our public lands. And let's fight like hell to keep them. Thank you.
I'm a proud federal retiree. I depend on the federal government currently for my tiny little pension because I was part of the group that had to start paying Social Security. And I retire, I have a thrift savings plan that's invested in the government and is tanking right now. And I have Medicare as my primary insurer. So I have a lot of anxiety. I have a sister who is fully disabled, has absolutely zero resources, and is a Medicaid paid bed. She will be homeless because all of her siblings are old and we cannot take care of her adequately. And I have a very dear friend who is struggling right now. In fact, we've spent hours this week trying to get him a very necessary operation, and we keep running into gutted offices who make up information that's false and give us numbers that go to fax machines. So my level of anxiety is with all of you up here. So I want to read something that I shared with the fellowship I belong to, and it's very applicable now, and I want to share it with all of you who are feeling disheartened and discouraged and downright scared. It's a quote from Dan Savage, and he's a LGBTQ+ activist. He wrote this during the AIDS crisis, but it could not be more applicable to all of us now. During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning. We protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night. The dance kept us in the fight because it was the dance that we were fighting for. It didn't look like we were going to win then, and we did. It doesn't feel like we're going to win now, but we could. Keep on fighting and keep on dancing.
Yesterday, I saw 2 video clips on the news that really grabbed me. One of them was the Venezuelan deportees who had landed in El Salvador, and they were bent over, chained together, as they walked to a horrible future. That's not the rule of law. They were illegally deported. Some of them are probably not even criminals, but they were deported without the rule of law. The second clip that really grabbed me and inspired me was Belgrade. Serbia is a country of less than 14 million people, and there were 300,000 people in the streets of Belgrade protesting their government. Why aren't we out there in mass numbers? My friend at NOAA, who was on probation with outstanding reviews, got fired. He's now going to protest, and he says they're pathetic. So what can we do? Maybe we need to get out on the street. Maybe we need to get in a car and drive to Washington, D.C. But if we're apathetic and we don't get out there and protest in huge numbers that even Trump could count, we're not doing our job.
And I'm here to speak on behalf of all the families in our community that need affordable access to early learning and childcare, something that's been unfortunately underfunded by our government for a long time. But with the recent attacks that we're seeing on programs for working people, that I have deep concerns about the future of the funding, the little funding that exists for early learning and childcare in our community. So one of the things that I plan to be talking to Representative Newhouse about is the Child Care and Development Block Grant, which funds in part the Working Connections Child Care program that we have 22 families accessing at Little Star right now. And that's a program where families get help through the state government. The funding for the state government comes from the federal government. And these families essentially get tuition assistance to attend Little Star. At Little Star, we have to charge tuition because there's no other public funding for the work that we do. And I just want to give you a quick picture of the type of work that these people are doing in our community. They are bookkeepers, carpenters, cattle ranchers, construction workers, house cleaners, janitors, nonprofit employees, preschool teachers, and small business owners. So all these people who are providing really important services in our community, if that funding goes away, they don't have childcare and they're not able to go to work. And that's a loss for them, that's a loss for our economy, and a loss for our kids here in the community. I also want to put out a word on behalf of our partners at Head Start. We have a Head Start program here in the Valley, which is a federally funded early learning program that's awesome. And I believe that there's concerns about funding for Head Start programs going forward. So I just want to put that out into your brain, and I intend to be speaking to Representative Newhouse about that. That's all I got for you today. Thank you all for being here and exercising your right for democracy.
I personally have two connections with federal agencies. One is that I worked for the Forest Service for the first 10 years that I lived here. And in addition to all the terrible things that are happening to them, I want to point out three that aren't brought up too often. I know about a young woman who was about a week away from completing her probationary period. She got the firing letter. But in addition to all those other griefs, now, because of the firing language, she is not eligible for unemployment. Many of us with the Forest Service used to get unemployment back in the years, and I think still do, but because of the firing language, that's not available to her now. Unemployment is not, due to the firing language, she also has to admit in future applications for jobs that she's been fired due to her performance. And finally, many Forest Service employees depend upon housing. This young woman was not only fired, she has 2 young children, but she had Forest Service housing. And so she's been cut off from all these other things just besides losing her job. The second thing is, my father was in the military, so I attended 10 elementary schools, 4 different 6th grades, et cetera, moving around the country all the time. And you wonder about why you need a Department of Education. Every time I changed schools, they were studying different things.
My mother had to catch me up because one place they were studying fractions, one place they were studying something else. Many times I heard one curriculum for social studies repeated year after year after year without other information. So coordination of school districts. The school districts can't do all of this on their own. So that's also very important. And by the way, if you are interested in standing in the streets, we have a regular demonstration in front of the community center at noon every Saturday. A peaceful demonstration, nonpartisan. Thank you.
I look around and we look like we were in the 60s together. I mean, how many of us were out there protesting in the 60s? Most of us little gray-haired people. We've got to figure out a way to come and help the least of us, whatever community that is, and however we can do it in this community. Thank you.
I'm going to put in a plug for the Twisp Valley Grange Hall. The National Grange was started in 1867, and from its inception, it welcomed African Americans to join, and it encouraged women to be in leadership positions. And we'd love to have some new members. Talk to me afterwards.
But I am a federal firefighter. I am not a big dog, and I'm not a smoke jumper. But last season, I was sent down to the retreat fire to be in charge of 18 very green firefighters. I am underqualified to do so, and we were being surrounded by exploding propane tanks and houses burning down. And we did our job, but I am a GS5, and it is of no fault of my overhead or coworkers that I was put in that situation, but the state of the Forest Service. I'm also not here representing the Forest Service. I just needed to bring that up, because that was before this all happened. And now I'm going into this season, and my partner is going into this season, knowing that that is not only true last year, but now we have even less people to help us. I am down to do this job and to be of service to my community, even though I'm only getting paid 19, 20 bucks an hour. But now it's getting to the point of my safety is not, this is like no longer becoming worth it. And I just need to bring this up because all of the people, I think a lot of people, or some people view the trails or fuels and other people who've gotten fired as not necessary, but they are extremely necessary for me to stay safe over the summer and for our community to stay safe over the summer, not just recreating, not just for fun times, but to like maintain our forests and our homes and our economy. So yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I've heard a call to go out in the streets, especially in metropolitan areas, from the National Indivisible Group on April 5th.
I should say, given some of the recent rhetoric by Speaker Johnson, that this is my community and I was not paid to be here. I wanted to say a couple of things. First is, along the lines of what we heard from Liz and what we just heard about the LGBTQ community, there used to be a word that was used a lot for this type of targeting, and I think we should just use it, and that word is eugenics. So let's just be clear about what's happening and tied to the history that we all learned, and hopefully that we can continue teaching our children. Speaking of children, that's what I wanted to talk about since there were not a lot of parents here today, as was brought up. This might be a little tough, hope you bear with me. I have a 7-year-old son, and he's been lucky to be raised here in this valley. He's had some teachers in this room, including Jeff and Liz. And a good segue from the last speaker, the world's turning away from us because we turn away from them. And what's happened with our European allies and Ukraine and our neighbors to the north. It does not take some fanciful logical leap to imagine what happens to my 7-year-old when he's 18. And I will not stand for him being conscripted to fight next to today's enemies against today's allies.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable. Last thing I'll say is along the lines of others, love your neighbors, don't condemn them, take care of each other, and take care of yourselves, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. Thank you.
I'm concerned about immigrants, whether they're documented or undocumented. If they aren't white wasps, they can get scooped up and deported. I went at the library recently and found this red card. It's produced by the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. And it gives instructions in Spanish and in English of how to behave if you are being, if someone's knocking on your door and wanting to serve you a warrant. I won't go into what you do. I hope there are some more cards like this at the library. If not, you can go on to Immigrant Legal Resource Center, and there's a lot of information there for undocumented or documented people. I'm trying to figure out how to give these cards out, because I don't have a lot, but I think we need to be aware of what they should do, what we can do if this happens to many of our neighbors. They have them at room 1.
And I just wanted to say that in the lead up to the election, I heard a lot about Project 2025 and said, yeah, whatever, this is crazy stuff. I would encourage people to read it, actually. You can download it from the web, and when you read it, you'll recognize what's going on. So in other words, that what we're seeing is not just an anomaly, it's not just a few crazy people who are taking over the government. This has been a long planned, well orchestrated, very well supported plan to change the way our country functions. We really need to understand that this is an alternative vision of the country, and it's well underway. You wondered how they hit the ground running. Well, they were definitely geared up, they're organized, they're well funded, and they're well on their way to accomplishing their mission, and we can't let them.
I just want to say that I was one of the people in the background of this event trying to be sure we had an opportunity, whatever opportunity we could, to get our message to Representative Newhouse. And I am so inspired today by listening to this group. I think a lot of us were worried there would be like anger and people yelling and screaming and that the representative would leave. The staffer would leave, and I kept thinking, what can we do? What's the action that matters? And I think this group has been an unbelievable example of community, of coming together, of shedding tears. I think we're all super sad, and grief, we've used the word grief. And I just want to applaud you guys for being an unbelievable community, and I am so proud.
I listened to a speech by Trudeau recently, and he spoke to the American people, and he spoke to Donald, and he spoke to the Canadian people. So there are elements of the rest of the world that know that America doesn't mean that Donald Trump is speaking for us. And I also feel the same way that Raleigh just said, that this is a truly remarkable meeting.
And
I am one of the organizers for Okanagan County Indivisible on Facebook. And we also have now Indivisible OMAC. And we're also coordinating with North County. We've had 2 rallies on the streets in OMAC and Okanagan recently, and try what I can. I have never seen a more wonderful group of community members, and I sure hope we can duplicate what you guys are doing here.
I have had conversations with Dan Newhouse in the past, and he has listened, but he has a very high bar. I found out during the mineral withdrawal. You have to ask him over and over and over, but he actually does listen, and I think he uses it to calculate how electable he is, so that, you know, we need to persist. One of the issues I would like to bring up is when I was a teacher at OMAC under Trump 1, the college basically pretty much almost shut down completely, and I think it's headed for a shutdown now. 40% of the college, Wenatchee Valley College in OMAC, were dreamers. That was an independent survey that the teachers and I did. It's not available online. 40% of the students left during Trump 1. They may be for good this time. And the last issue I'd like to bring up is the government accountability thing. A friend of mine who worked for the government up until she was given a choice to leave or show up in the office because she'd been in COVID isolation. She decided to quit 6 months before her retirement. And her little group of about a dozen people worked in GSA, and they can account that they saved they're under contracting, they saved America $50 million a year. And so she's gone now. Some of them are still there, but she's pretty convinced that what is happening is to make the government go bankrupt, so we can basically buy America. Rich people can buy America pennies on the dollar.
I'm a retired National Park Service Chief Ranger. As such, like many federal employees, I took an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I feel like we have domestic enemies right now. My question for the Congressman really is, what is being done, this way or that way, what's being done to make DOGE accountable to the law and to the courts, because they don't seem to be that way. And if Congress is going to be a co-equal branch of government, they need to step up. And I think it's clear that the general trend is cutting services to the most vulnerable, while apparently preserving tax breaks for the most wealthy who don't need them. And I think we need to keep hitting on that message. And just because federal agencies are dear to my heart, we have to point out again that most of the people who were let go were entry-level, lower-paid people. It's not making a huge dent in the budget, but it's devastating the future leaders of these agencies. Thank you.
A retired teacher from OMAC, and I've lived in the valley for about 35 years. And I started listening and getting sick to my stomach back around 1998, when we started to be told that the government is our problem, and that everything that the government does is bad, and that the people working in the government are a bunch of bloated bureaucrats who sit around and don't do anything. And we have been fed that. And I have been frustrated with not hearing anybody push back hard against that. I want leaders who are going to be able to defend public service. I am tired of seeing public servants ground down, demoralized, debased. We own this government. Donald Trump is our employee.
Yes.
I would have to fire his ass. I am really hoping for a very loud voice that will defend public service again and claim our government for ourselves. I'm doing this for my grandkids.
I'm a citizen of the United States, and I've lived in the valley for 25 years. I will be reading the question that my husband wrote for Dan Newhouse, and he hope his staffers will give it to him. Dan Newhouse, do you believe the House of Representatives has abrogated its oversight responsibility with respect to Elon Musk and Doge? And if not, would you please explain? This is written by Glenn Peterson. I have another reading I like to do. It's from a German historian and philosopher who lived from 1906 to 1975. This constant lying is not aimed at making the people believe a lie, but ensuring that no one believes anything anymore. A people that can no longer distinguish between truth and lies cannot distinguish between right and wrong. And such a people, deprived of the power to think and judge, is without knowing and willingness completely subjected to the rule of lies. With such a people, you can do whatever you want. This was written by Hannah Arendt, philosopher.
Most of the things that we're hearing about today are things we're all aware of, that we know are happening, and they're awful things. But there are a lot of small things getting by without us being necessarily aware of them, or with that maybe congressmen think are not as important. Friday night, President Trump issued an executive order to eliminate the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This is the only federal organization that funds our libraries in part. I don't know how much of the funding actually is needed to keep our libraries going, but it looks to me like they want us to be ignorant of our history and ignorant of what is happening, and preferably uneducated so we can't follow what's going on.
Yep. I talked to Shannon downstairs, and I have an issue with, and what I brought to Shannon to bring back to our representative is as a historically Republican voter, I stand in opposition to cuts that are not surgical. So my specific subject matter, very pointed, so I won't lose you too much. The VA cuts the most important portion of its staff when it cuts veterans who, be them probationary or not. There's no such thing as probationary if you're a veteran working for the government. Your resume is already painted. And I wanted our representative to know that while I support cuts where they're appropriate in duplicitous contracts and things like that, the amount of contracts that we have focused through the VA on taking care of veterans who, by the way, 1 in 5 federal employees is a veteran, right? Yeah. And we also know that approximately, 1 million veterans floating around out there, somebody's involved in some sort of business that benefits our economy, right? Takes care of our communities and things of that nature. So the concept that I presented to the staff was that he look at the specific cuts DOJ makes from a judiciary standpoint, where he can judge whether those cuts are warranted through the secretary. And I don't believe that's happening. Right now we have mass cuts that are not directed by secretaries. Where we had a young man that said he was let go for performance. Okay, poor performance, that's great. Well, if you're in a probationary period, how do you know what your performance really is, right? You haven't been there long enough. So you've got to allow that probationary period to follow through. Now, this comes from I have a long, extended period of 40 plus years in government. So I understand what the probationary period is. And that's what I discussed with Shannon downstairs. She was exceedingly receptive to it. She understands where veterans stand in our communities and how much they are a value, sometimes known, sometimes not known, right? But they are a massive value. So what I'd like to leave you with is simply this. I believe that that message will be transmitted. I believe that if Representative Newhouse, who has demonstrated in the past his ability to vote with his conscience, if we continue to support the things that he does right, I think we will get more of the same. And he is one of 2 that survived after impeaching Trump. So if this side of the aisle has any conduit, it's through him. And we need to support his good behavior as well as things that we want him to do and be more receptive to it. Thank you.
We spoke with Ashley and it was a really good experience. She listened. I felt like she actively listened, and what we were concerned with, we narrowed it down to 2 very simple things that were currently on our list. But our list is really long and it keeps us up at night. I was concerned about student loans, and right now if you go to the website, especially if it's income-based, it's really hard to figure out how do we pay this back? How do we do our part to be a good citizen and be responsible and pay our bills on time when it's all being decimated? So we got a little information. There's not a lot that they can do to help us in that regard. The second question that we posed was what's happening to our information. Social Security is being picked apart by 20-something-year-olds by someone who's not elected. I did not vote for Elon Musk. I'm pretty sure my parents did not vote for Elon Musk. So what is he looking at? My information? How do we find out what he saw, what they are looking at, and if it's safe still? Those are 2, I don't think they're necessarily the most important questions that we can ask right now, but it was a way to sit down face to face with someone. And then we wanted to know, is there going to be a town hall? We would love to talk to Representative Newhouse. He works for us. He represents us. We appreciate the hard work. We appreciate what he's done in the past. But I don't feel represented well when Congress is abdicating all of their power. That doesn't make me feel like my vote went to the right person. So we do feel like we got heard. She was very receptive and kind, and that's lovely. I would like to see some action. Well, so, time will tell on that one. Yeah, I think our impression was good. I would still like to see Dan step up and do something that I can get behind and not just hope. So.
was walking past the wall this morning on the way out the door, and I looked and there's this photograph of me that a friend sent it out of the blue. I haven't even talked to this person for 100 years. And it was a picture of me in the peace marches. Oh, 60, so. So come on, people. We can do it.
The representatives are still downstairs, and I want you to bring down the roof after what I say, so that they hear it. How, that means everything. Go wild. How about our Canadian neighbors that just slapped 100% tariffs on Teslas?